Alright, so we're going to go ahead and connect to the CatchWire. Before I do that, I need to set up my serial port. And I will change this to TTY USB 0. No flow control. I'll plug in the device. And here we can see some of the boot sequence. Now this will take a little bit longer than the typical boot sequence if you're booting the standard version of Linux that comes with the CatchWire. And the reason for that is that I am booting up the deck Linux here, and that has an awful lot of extra stuff that is coming up. You can see here where it came up and it started a bridge process that bridges the two Ethernet adapters. And here we are bringing up some additional stuff. Now I can go ahead and log in. The default login is Ubuntu. Temp pwd as displayed in the banner message. I've managed to boot Deck Linux. So I've gone ahead and I've run up Metasploit on my CatchWire. And now one of the first things I want to do is just verify that I'm connected to my database, which I am. And I can go ahead and run a DBMap. And we can see that it's finished. We can also notice that this host here, 123, looks like it has some interesting services. It's got an FTP server, an HTTP server, and some Windows file sharing. So it looks like we might have some interesting opportunities in order to exploit things on that machine. And of course, I can run my hosts command. I can also run my services. So now that I have my list of hosts and services, have another look at this list and find something that we might want to try to attack. So I see right here that I have a free float FTP server, which could be vulnerable, and some other things that are vulnerable as well. But let's start with our good old friend, good old MS-08067. So I'm going to try and run up this exploit. MS-08067 Net API, show options, set our host to 192.168.1.123. Now I'm going to set my payload, show our options again, and we will say our local host is here. Now we're ready to run our exploit. And there you have it. We just opened an interpreter session on a Windows machine using our old friend, MS-08067. I can go ahead and do a screenshot, hash dump. There we go. And all the usual Metasploit commands. So we have a host that's running an FTP server. We can verify that with nmap. So if I do an nmap on 192.168.1.120, which is a system that we previously identified as running FTP, we can then use the CatchWire to capture all of the packets to or from the system. Again, the CatchWire is installed in line to this LAN segment. So I can pretty much do whatever I want. And here we see, sure enough, yes, there is an FTP server running. So I will go ahead and run TCP dump. And I give it the -n hosts and the name or IP address. Please be verbose. And -A says, take all of your stuff and send it to ASCII. So give me an ASCII representation of my packets. I will pipe that to egrep, and I will look for either user in uppercase and then a space, or pass in uppercase and then a space. So once I do that, it will start listening. I can go to another machine in my network, and I can log in via FTP. And voila, there you have it. User Joe logged in with password 1. Now, one thing I should say about this script, I have not been sophisticated enough to say, okay, was it a successful login or not? Although I would say that sometimes it's just as good to have it this way. For one thing, this is super simple. We have one line of commands, and we're not using anything fancy. We didn't have to even write a script for this one. The other thing I would say is the people that fat finger passwords, sometimes if they're one of those occasional people that doesn't reuse their password everywhere, perhaps they typed in a password for some other system that you might want to hack later. There you have it. There's a really simple way you can use the CatchWire in order to do some sniffing and some hacking. So you want to do some sniffing on the CatchWire and have it displayed on your workstation elsewhere. So how can you do this? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to enable root to log in. The reason you need to do this is that by default, root is not allowed to log in. So you need to go to the etc sshd config file, and in that file you will find a line that says permit root login, which I've already changed to yes. Previously it said without password. So if you wanted to set up keys, it was allowable, but if you wanted to use a password, it was not. So now that that's been done, I'll just quit and go ahead and show you how to run this. So on your workstation, not the CatchWire device, you'll need to bring up a terminal and run this command. So the command is going to be ssh root, and again, you want to run this as root because being prompted for a password is problematic, and you need to be root in order to run TCP dump appropriately. Here's the address for my CatchWire. Here I have the full path to TCP dump. I'm going to output full packets. I'm going to write them to dash, which means standard out. I've piped that to Wireshark -k. -k means please immediately run this -i dash. So it's going to accept input from standard in and take that input and display it. So I'll go ahead and press enter. Notice that Wireshark popped up, prompted for my root password, and now I'm listening. Not much is happening at this moment, but as I start generating some traffic, it will. So I can go ahead and I can repeat my previous demo, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in to my FTP server. And there we have it. I've logged in. I'm going to go ahead and stop my capture here, and I'm going to do a search where my target address is 120. And what do I have here? There's a request, user Joe, password 1. So there you have it. Yet another way that I can sniff some traffic, and in this case, I am exporting that traffic remotely to another workstation. Remember that when you do this, I didn't do this for this example, but in reality, you might want to filter some of these packets in TCP dump. For one thing, it's going to be a lot of bandwidth, and it might be extremely suspicious if there's a huge spike in traffic flowing out of someone's network. Let's go ahead and do a demo with the CatchWire that is connected to my workstation via XB or Zigbee networking. So I've gone ahead and installed the Mesh Deck add-on, and I have plugged in my USB adapter, which allows me to control my CatchWire from up to 2 miles away. And again, another thing to keep in mind, why would you want to do this? You can do this because you might be blocked by firewalls and such. And in addition to that, it might be very suspicious if there is suddenly a bunch of traffic flowing out of your target's network. So I'm going to go ahead and run up the MeshDeck server. And I've set up my CatchWire to be on device 3. I'll run a quick test just to make sure everything is working properly by running a dmessage command, and it is. I can also check my networking with ifconfig, and I can see that this device has attached itself at address 120. Again, if I use this, I need to be aware that I might have issues with detection from my target. Let's run Nmap on a machine in this network. And I can see this machine is running an FTP server, a web server, and appears to be doing Windows file sharing, and has some other things running as well. So let's have some fun with Metasploit. We'll go ahead and we're going to run a Metasploit command, and we'll just pop up a simple shell.
So now let's have a look at another machine. I've set up a multi-handler. I set the payload appropriately to run a reverse shell, set my parameters, and I run the exploit. Pretty soon I get a shell that's created. However, it almost immediately dies because of some problem, which is not unusual with Metasploit. Occasionally things just don't work. So I hit it again, and this time I successfully created a reverse shell. I can interact with it in Metasploit, and from there I can run all the various shell commands, such as a quick ipconfig just to verify that I'm on the machine that I think I am and how it's connected to everything else.